Warning. The following fanfic reading is for mature audiences only. It contains graphic content such as blood, gore, death, graphic descriptions of executions, and adult jokes. Viewers' discretion is advised. Bullet Point. Written by Reeve. Chapter 1. All Rise. Day 3. 12:18 p.m. The group was silent as they descended the marble steps, some anxious as to what awaited them beyond the pearly white door at the bottom, others lost in their own thoughts regarding the circumstances that led them here. Pinkie Pie most of all.
Twilight was killed by one of these ponies. I don't know which. Not yet, at least. And when I do find out, Ow!
Pinkie stopped dead in her tracks as that thought dawned on her. What would she do when she discovered the identity of Twilight's killer? She hadn't thought that far ahead. Pinkie? Pinkie looked up to see Vinyl waiting for her, the rest of the group already moving into the room beyond the door. Are you all right?
I'll be fine. Let's just get this over with,
Pinkie assured her, walking ahead before adding in a whisper.
We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Passing through the archway, Pinkie and Vinyl were forced to shield their eyes from the surprisingly intense blast of light. Peeking from behind her hooves, Pinkie began to make out the room they were standing in. They seemed to be in a wide, circular room. The word rotunda floated to her mind from somewhere deep in her memories. What really drew Pinkie's eyes, however, and those of every other pony gathered, was the construct stretching from the center of the room, near to the edges, giving them all very little room to stand about. It appeared to be a chest-high barrier, formed from a rather basic wooden banister. Around this barrier at regular intervals were semicircular alcoves directed inwards to the center of the room that was inaccessible due to the barrier itself. Within each alcove was a small bench upon which rested a dial of some sort. Next was the section of the floor within each of the alcoves, where a circular glyph was carved, emanating an ominous white glow. The final aspect of the room that warranted the gathered ponies' attention were the screens mounted along the wall, one directly behind each alcove. They would have been identical to the one in the dining room, but for one major difference. Rather than displaying a blank or pixelated screen, each screen showed the faces of one of the ponies in the room. Pinkie saw her own smiling face staring back at her from the screen above the door. To the left of that, Vinyl's face was displayed, and to her right was a picture of Twilight, marred by a red X drawn across her face.
Welcome to the courtroom!
The mastermind's voice greeted, the screen directly opposite Pinkie's own, coming to life to display the familiar ocean of grayscale noise.
If you would all like to take your designated positions, we can begin.
What are these drawings on the ground?
Lightning Dust asked, crouching down beside one and tentatively poking it with an outstretched hoof.
Those are binding rings. Once you step inside it, you will be locked inside until the end of the trial.
And what if we refuse?
Lightning challenged, standing up and facing the mastermind's screen defiantly.
Then I'll kill you myself and we can move on without you.
Their words achieved the desired effect as ponies began stepping into the alcoves in front of their own screens in a disgruntled but obedient fashion.
Well. It's so nice when ponies make things easy for themselves.
Stepping into her own alcove, Pinkie decided to test what the mastermind had just said by reaching out with a hoof, only to have it repelled like she was trying to force two positive ends of a magnet together. Once they were all standing ready in their positions, the screens displaying their faces flickered off, leaving only Twilight's and the Mastermind's on.
It would be a shame to leave Twilight out of this just because one of you chose to end her life.
Pinkie gritted her teeth but remained silent.
Now, as you will have no doubt noticed, before each of you is a dial. At any point when you feel enough evidence has been presented, you may turn the dial to whom you believe is the culprit. May I ask Fleur to give us a quick demonstration?
Fleur looked up, clearly surprised at having been picked out, but obeyed nonetheless, reaching forward with a huff and turning the dial in front of her to a random point. As she did, the screen behind her flicked to an image of Blue Blood. Blue Blood himself glaring daggers at Fleur for having made an example of him.
Thank you,
the Mastermind said, Fleur's screen returning to blank.
When every pony has voted, or refused to vote as the case may be, the guilty pony will be revealed. If the majority of ponies has voted against them, then justice will be served. If the majority do not vote against them, however, then every pony but the culprit will be executed, and the killer will walk free.
This sudden revelation sparked a wave of shouts of outrage from many of the ponies gathered.
You didn't tell us we were all on the line!
But you have come along so willingly otherwise. This will ensure none of you try to defy me by intentionally voting against some pony other than the culprit.
What exactly will happen to the culprit if they're found guilty?
They will be punished. Are there any other questions before we begin?
Yeah, I got one.
Every pony looked over to Vinyl, who was staring up at the Mastermind's screen.
This room. I noticed something weird about it. I noticed the same thing about the dining room. There are places for 16 ponies, but there are only 15 of us.
Indeed, now that she had mentioned it, Pinkie hadn't even realized there was an even number of alcoves and screens, the 16th of which was directly opposite her and displayed the Mastermind.
How astute! However, you needn't worry about it. The answer, I'm sure you'll find disappointingly simple. I'm a stickler for even numbers, that is all.
OCD much?
Vinyl whispered, so only Pinkie to her immediate left could hear her. The pair shared a hushed giggle before the Mastermind spoke again.
If that is all,
they said loudly, as if trying to silence the pair.
Then let the first trial begin!
Well...
Trenderhoof said, nervously looking about to see if anybody else was going to start.
I guess we should state the obvious. Twilight Sparkle was killed in her room. She was obviously stabbed to death.
That I know was wrong. Let's start from there and see where we can get to. Actually, that's not right at all.
Pinkie interrupted, causing Trenderhoof to flinch in surprise.
How could it not be the case? She had the knife in her.
It does look that way, I know. But from her symptoms, we figured she must have been poisoned. Nurse Redheart examined the body. She can back me up on this.
As an alicorn, it would have taken more than a mere knife to kill Twilight Sparkle.
I fail to see what difference it makes how she died.
Gizmo chipped in, rolling his eyes.
We all know who killed her. Talking about it is just wasting time.
You have a suspect?
Fleur asked, surprised at Gizmo's outburst.
Of course I do. It's so obvious. The one who killed Twilight Sparkle was Prince Blueblood.
Everyone followed Gizmo's accusing hoof to see blue blood rolling his eyes.
Trust a mindless commoner to reach such a ridiculous conclusion.
You've been getting up in every pony's flank since we got here. Twilight especially. Has every pony forgotten what happened yesterday at dinner?
He has a good point. What were you talking to Twilight about yesterday? I could hear her shouting from the kitchens.
That is no one's business but my own.
Blue blood stated flatly, turning his nose up.
Give it a rest, buddy!
Vinyl said, planting her forehoofs on the bench in front of her.
Right now, you're our #1 suspect. So unless you're gonna come out and admit to it, you'd better start giving us some solid proof it wasn't you.
If you must know, yesterday I asked Twilight to marry me.
We got it! Wait, what?
The truth is, I have been taken with her for some time.
Blue blood continued, ignoring the wide-eyed stares of every pony around him.
But it was only yesterday I found the courage to...
Oh, give it a rest.
Fleur interrupted, causing Blue blood to shoot her a venomous glare.
The simple truth is, after I reminded you of your actual position in the royal court, you thought you'd be crafty and marry into royalty, thus giving you the authority you craved. You didn't care about Princess Twilight. She was merely a means to an end.
Yeah, then she bitch-slapped you like a boss.
Cloud Chaser exclaimed, proceeding to laugh her ass off. Blue blood was now seething with anger once more.
This just supports my argument. He had more motive than any of us to hate Twilight.
Not that I'm arguing with you there, but don't we all have a motive to kill? Because of this game and all?
That's why I said more motive.
You seem pretty sure about your assumptions, Gizmo. Why don't you walk us through what you think happened?
Gladly. The way I see it, Blue Blood waited until Twilight was asleep, forced his way into her room, and stabbed her while she slept.
That assessment has more holes than a hunk of cheese. That couldn't have happened.
Pinkie cut in, causing Gizmo to frown in confusion.
How couldn't it?
He asked, scratching his head.
Remember what Trixie told us yesterday? Forcing our way through doors will result in punishment. And she wasn't asleep when she was attacked, and she was laying on top of the covers.
Alright then. How do you think it happened?
Well, I believe Twilight invited the killer inside. I know this because Twilight's key was in the lock, when normally she leaves it on her dresser. If we assume this is the case, then Twilight could have let the killer in and walked back to her bed and stood at the bottom end. It's at that point the killer struck.
That's oddly specific. How could you possibly know any of that?
The stab wounds were in her back, but also her right side. If she did fall forward onto the bed after being attacked, the killer would have approached from that direction.
Is she good or what?
So, what you're saying is Twilight let the killer in? Heck, I don't see how it could be Blue Blood in that case.
It does make it less likely. But it doesn't rule any of us out entirely. Not yet, at least.
If we're just throwing out accusations, then I think it was Trixie.
Me?
Trixie exclaimed, a snarl forming on her face.
I heard about your little rivalry with Twilight Sparkle. This would be the perfect opportunity to bump off the competition.
You might see life that way, but Trixie does not stoop to such dirty methods.
For what it's worth, Trixie and I were both there when we discovered the body. And the looks on her face when she saw, I don't believe she had anything to do with it.
Oh, we're basing guilt on looks now?
Real professional!
Lightning snapped at Coco, causing her to whimper and sink low to the ground.
Hey, lay off her!
Ladies, please!
Fleur interrupted before things could escalate.
We need to focus on the facts and stop making baseless accusations. Why don't we look back at the poison?
What makes you so sure poison was used at all?
Donut Joe asked, looking to Pinkie.
Isn't it possible she was just suffering from regular blood poisoning? It might not have been part of the murder at all.
He's got a point. I have nothing to prove definitively that poison was the method employed.
Actually, Trixie believes she has the proof you need.
Pinkie snapped her head up to see Trixie levitating a sheet of paper in front of every pony. Upon it was written what looked like a series of instructions with diagrams alongside them.
What is that?
Trixie found this blocking Twilight's toilet. It is a recipe page detailing the process to craft the very poison Trixie believes was used to coat the blade that killed Twilight Sparkle.
Wait, is that why he seems so interested in the blocked toilet?
Indeed! Trixie couldn't rule it out as being unrelated to the case.
Doesn't this prove Blue Blood is responsible? Surely with his fancy upbringing, he'd have learned to mix potions.
Actually, it proves the exact opposite. As much as I hate to admit it, this piece of evidence proves Blue Blood could not have killed Twilight.
Really? How?
Trenderhoof asked, quirking an eyebrow.
It proves nothing!
Really, Blue Blood?
Fleur said, shaking her head.
Are you really so proud that you would continue to lie even when it would guarantee your innocence?
I don't know what you're talking about!
Would some pony please explain what's going on?
The truth is,
Fleur began, clearly relishing the look of fury Blue Blood was aiming her way.
Prince Blue Blood is illiterate.
You don't seriously mean...
He can't read?
Cloud Chaser exclaimed, before collapsing in another wave of raucous laughter.
Indeed,
Fleur confirmed, ignoring the now sweating profusely Blue Blood.
I found this out at last year's Grand Galloping Gala. It makes sense after all. An individual as pompous as Blue Blood. Why would he ever need to learn something so common when he had dozens of servants at Hoof to do it for him?
I guess that really does prove it. Blue Blood couldn't have mixed the poison, and Twilight would never have let him into her room. He couldn't have killed her.
Hey, Trixie, does the recipe for that poison include something called tartrazine?
Huh?
Trixie replied, thrown off guard for a second before scanning the page.
Why, yes. But how did you know that?
Well, after Nurse Redheart figured out Twilight was poisoned, I headed up to the alchemy lab.
Vinyl explained, fishing the broken remains of the bottle she had found from her saddlebags.
While I was there, I found this broken on the floor.
So that's what Vinyl was about to show me before we got called to the entrance hall.
Pass it here.
Vinyl obliged by levitating it out towards Trixie, who accepted it and began examining it.
Hey, Trixie, can I see that after you?
Pinkie asked, receiving a nod of acknowledgement.
I think it's safe to assume the poison really was used, but that doesn't bring us any closer to figuring out who mixed it.
What about the murder weapon? Where did it come from?
Oh yeah!
Brayburn exclaimed, suddenly remembering. Rummaging in the saddlebags, he pulled out the knife.
Did you manage to source that as Trixie asked you to?
Well, about that, I actually have no clue where this came from.
Trixie slammed her face into the bench in front of her, letting out a small moan that could have been from pain or frustration.
Wait a second. I know that knife. Brayburn, could I see that knife?
Sure.
Brayburn said, relieved to have some pony take the burden from him.
How do I...
But before he could finish, the knife was wrapped in a pale pink aura and levitated over to Pinkie along with the bottle Trixie had been examining. Pinkie put the bottle to the side for the time being. Instead, she focused all her attention on the knife.
This is one of the knives from the kitchen.
How can you tell?
Vinyl and I were in the kitchen last night, getting the snack. All the knives have these black handles. But more than that, this is a wavy edge kitchen knife. It's specifically used for cutting things like tomatoes, as teeth allow greater pressure to be exerted on the food, so it's perfect for cutting through things with tough skin.
Now how in the hay do you know all that?
I work in a bakery.
Pinkie explained, giving a little shrug.
We don't use vegetables, but you can still learn these things.
So what's to say you or Vinyl didn't take that knife while you were in the kitchen last night?
Seriously? You're gonna accuse Twilight's closest friend of murdering her?
What's to say neither of us took it is the fact that we were having sandwiches last night, within which there were tomatoes.
Pinkie said, as if this somehow explained everything. When she was instead met with a series of blank stares, she chose to elaborate.
We looked for this knife specifically and couldn't find it. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but now it's obvious it had to have been stolen before that.
So, what exactly are you suggesting?
I think I'm starting to get a good idea of who's responsible for this. But just to be sure, I need to know one last thing. Trixie?
Pinkie said, placing her hooves on the bench before her.
That recipe for the poison. Did you figure out where it came from?
Yes, I did. I searched right up until the trial was called to order. And at last, I found that it had been torn from a book called The Venomous Enchiridion.
What section of the library did you find that book?
Pinkie asked. If she was right, this would be the last bit of evidence required.
If I recall correctly, it was the maple section.
Bingo! Thank you, Trixie. I think I know who was responsible for this now.
You do?
She knows who did it already?
I guess it kind of makes sense that a mage, whose special talent revolved around plants, would name the sections in his library after types of trees. However, the book you just mentioned wasn't the only one to come from that section. A book called 1001 Popular Zebra Recipes. A book picked out by the killer... Donut Joe!
What?
Donut Joe exclaimed, his eyes stretching wide in horror.
Seriously, Pinkie? That guy?
Yeah, I didn't kill anyone. How could you even think that?
Care to explain your reasoning, Pinkie?
For starters, the murder weapon.
Pinkie held up the kitchen knife before every pony.
This knife clearly came from the kitchen, where Donut Joe has been working exclusively.
But I was in the kitchen as well.
That's right. But you were the one delivering the food to the dining room. So Joe had plenty of time where he was alone in the kitchen to have hidden the knife. On top of that, he was searching through the same section of the library where that recipe page was taken from, which he proved by taking a book from that very section.
That's ridiculous! Any pony could have taken that knife and page.
True, but I don't think many of us could have made heads or tails of that recipe. For any pony who has never had experience mixing potions and stuff, it would be downright gibberish.
Well, I've never mixed potions before.
No, but you are a baker, just like me. I could probably take a good stab at mixing that up. It would just be like following any other recipe, so I know you could too.
You're just assuming!
Next!
Pinkie continued, ignoring Joe's shouts.
Twilight let the killer in. That means she must have known them, trusted them, and who would she have trusted more than the friendly baker she knew since she was a filly?
Exactly. I knew Twilight said she was just a kid. Why would I kill her?
You were desperate. We all are. And desperation can make ponies do crazy things.
And don't forget about the hoof print.
What hoof print? There was a large plant pot up the hall from Twilight's room. It had been knocked over and a hoof print had been made in the soil. It was still standing last night when Vinyl and I went to the kitchen. So whoever knocked it down did so after that and were in too much of a hurry to put it back up.
The hoof print itself was too big to belong to most ponies in this room. I'd say the only ponies big enough would be Blue Blood, Brayburn, and Joe.
None of this proves anything!
Joe shouted, slamming his hooves onto the bench.
I didn't steal that knife. I wasn't anywhere near Twilight's room, and I didn't mix that poison.
Yes, you did! And I can prove it!
The room fell silent. All eyes started between Pinkie and Donut Joe, waiting with bated breath for what Pinkie was about to pull out of her sleeve.
You're not wearing your shirt today.
Yeah, so?
What if I told you that Coco found a shirt with a bright yellow stain today in the laundry room? A stain which, try as she might, she could not wash off.
Oh yeah! You don't mean...
Pinkie lifted the broken bottle so everyone could see it, particularly the remains of its content, coating the inside and staining it yellow.
You broke the tartrazine when you were mixing the poison,
Pinkie said, staring Donut Joe directly in the eyes.
It spilled on your shirt, so you dumped it in the laundry room before going to make your kill.
Donut Joe was utterly silent. His mouth hung open. His whole body was paralyzed.
Do you deny it?
Joe stammered. It was no good, however. The stallion collapsed to his knees, shaking uncontrollably.
I'm so sorry. I just wanted to go home so badly.
We all want to go home. And Princess Twilight was probably our best asset at achieving that.
Dude, how could you do that? She trusted you, man! And you stabbed her in the back!
I know! Don't you think I know?
Joe screamed, tears now streaming down his face.
I kept telling myself it was for the best. If one of us could get out, if I could get out, I could get help. I could save the others. I didn't know every pony would have to die for me to go free.
Vinyl looked over at Pinkie. Pinkie saw the confusion etched in Vinyl's face. She understood. She didn't know how she felt either.
Well.
The mastermind's voice echoed. Some ponies jumped, forgetting their screen had been on the entire time.
It looks like you solved the mystery. About time, too. I was about to declare it time to vote before you figured it all out. Oh well, no time like the present, eh?
Pinkie looked down to see the dial in front of her was now glowing.
It's voting time!
I can't!
Every pony looked at Coco.
I know what he did was wrong, but I can't bring myself to sentence him to whatever you have in store.
If you don't, we all pay the price.
Listen to your friend, lest you be the one to face execution.
Pinkie looked down at her dial, then back up to Donut Joe where he lay, still sobbing and muttering apologies. She gave one small sigh.
I'm sorry,
she whispered before turning her dial to Donut Joe. When Donut Joe's face appeared on the screen behind Pinkie, it wasn't long before the others began to follow suit. Soon, all but 3 screens bore his face, one being his own, the second being the one that still showed Twilight's face, and the final being the mastermind screen.
All right, the votes are in.
Instantly, all the screens blanked. Instead, only the mastermind screen displaying large cartoonish letters reading guilty. This screen blanked, and the guilty letters moved across to Blue Blood's screen to the immediate right. It continued to travel across the screens, getting faster and faster until the screens resembled a roulette wheel. At last, after several agonizing seconds of clicking, the guilty letters began slowing down, getting slower and slower, before finally stopping completely on the screen behind Donut Joe. A loud fanfare began to play as many fireworks and confetti danced across all the screens. However, no pony felt like celebrating.
Well done! You correctly identified Twilight Sparkle's killer. And you know what that means. Time for justice to be served.
Wait!
Pinkie didn't know what she wanted, but it wasn't this. It wasn't to see Twilight's killer executed at the will of this psychopath. But it was too late. Even as the word left Pinkie's mouth, the floor beneath Donut Joe disappeared, and he plunged into the abyss.
What happened to him?
Pinkie was spared wondering, when all at once, all 16 screens flickered to show the same image. Donut Joe lay in a crumpled heap on what looked like a giant duvet. It wasn't until he started moving and Pinkie saw whatever it was sticking to him that she realized it was dough. Donut Joe had been dropped into a giant vat of dough. Pinkie only had a few seconds to ponder this before she saw something that made her heart stop dead in her chest. Dozens of long mechanical arms began reaching into the vat, each one moving in a rhythmic motion. As soon as they reached into the dough, Pinkie realized with newfound horror what they were doing. They were kneading the dough, with Donut Joe in it. Some ponies forced themselves to look away from the screens, but Pinkie was transfixed by it. Even when the arm's tempo increased and Donut Joe was lost amidst the sea of dough, only his muffled, agonizing screams to be heard, Pinkie still couldn't tear her gaze from the screens. Soon, the once uniform dough was streaked with red and pink. Large chunks of Pinkie didn't want to imagine what scattered throughout it. After what felt like an eternity, the arms retracted and the vat began to tip. The screens zoomed out to show the contents of the vat being poured into a baking tray with little rings indented across it. When the tray was full of the sickening mixture, it was then lifted by more arms into what looked like a giant furnace. Time ticked by slowly, and for a while, nothing happened. But eventually, the screens flickered off, and the center of the room opened up. Something rising up from the depths. It was a platform, upon which rested a bowl, and inside the bowl were over a dozen surprisingly normal-looking donuts.
Donuts, any pony?
The mastermind asked, before bursting into loud, maniacal laughter. Pinkie stared at the bowl, her stomach churning, her head feeling faint.
I didn't want this.
Gotta find a way. We'll do anything, even if we know it. this fire to choke. Gotta find a way, gotta find a way. We'll do anything to find a way. Don't let these walls confine you, and don't let this world deny you. Gotta find a way, gotta find a way. We'll do anything, even if we throw it all away. Play this once again. Play this once again.
You're just assuming. And you know what happens when you assume. You make an ass out of you and Ming. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to go home so badly.
I guess that really does prove it. Blue blood could not mix the potion.
Potion? No, it's poison. My god. Fucking hell. Can I fucking read? Okay. Jesus Christ. I swear to God, I am not illiterate. Not in the slightest. Hey everyone, Agent Fluffy here, and thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. If you want to support me even more, feel free to support my Patreon. The links are right here.